Okay, we're recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stacks Governance Group's working group session. I think there's a better name for this. Today is Thursday, October 8th, just a little past noon Eastern, and I am here with Jude, Jason, and Ryan. Thanks for joining. We don't have a huge turnout today, but I think it's worth our time to go through the agenda and sort of get caught up on issues that we've discussed in the past month or so. So thank you to Jason for updating the agenda. Let me share my screen. I might need some assistance moderating this. I know it's really straightforward, but I always get nervous that I'm just gonna mess up the process.
No problem. And just a quick note on where we are today too. So this is the first time we're using a new agenda template that comes up. So whenever we create a new issue, it goes ahead and lists out this agenda template, and it's very straightforward and points back to the labels that we have for all the different meeting items and everything else. So we're going to kind of take that focus back to the issues, but I'll let you go ahead and lead. If you need any of my input at any point, I'm happy to help.
Sure. Thank you. And as you saw, I just messed with the screen share. So let me just turn off my notifications from Discord. That should be less distracting. Jesus Christ. There we go. Okay, so you all can see that, right?
Yep.
You didn't on GitHub. All right, so why don't we just start with a quick round of stand-ups, and just as a reminder, we'll go over what everyone is working on right now, whether you're facing any blockers, and what you expect to happen over the next couple of weeks, which I think is a new question that is great for getting everyone caught up on our progress and what our goals are for each of our projects. I'm just going to go down what looks like my list. Jude, do you want to share what you're working on, any blockers, and your goals for the next couple of weeks?
I guess my roles are basically to keep working on the Stacks grant committee, and not much motion on, not much movement of the needle on the voting proposal, unfortunately, because we're trying to get Stacks 2.0 out the door. And that's just where we are right now. I'm blocked on lack of time.
Time is blocking. Okay. Anything you expect to happen over the next 2 weeks?
We'll probably approve more grants. I know that I think last time we talked about the voting proposal, which was the last major thing that I had. There was a way to there was a proposal, I think, for someone to write a grant to explore various types of voting options more, but I mean, that's probably the extent that I'll be able to contribute to that front of the next 2 weeks, unfortunately. I'm just reviewing said proposal if it ever materializes.
Got it. Thank you. Jason?
All right, so on my side, I went ahead and merged in this PR that does the agenda templates like I mentioned earlier. So we're going to start working with that. Now I'm working on the standard operating procedures document that we have, trying to get that updated and basically trying to streamline things so it's much easier for anybody to be involved at whatever level they want to be involved. So we've got a pretty good structure that we've built just since we started this group, and we're just trying to continually refine that and make it as simple as possible. I don't have any blockers at this point, just trying to keep up with it. And I'd say over the next 2 weeks, my goal is definitely to have those operating procedures done. And if that goes really smoothly, I'm also trying to update some of the calls based on our calls table that we have in the resources repo, as well as go through some of these action items and discussion items to see what we can close out. Because we definitely have some lingering items, like some were more discussion points that we wanted to hang on to, and some are things that probably have been acted on that we can look at finishing out and making that list a little shorter.
Got it. Anything blocking you and any goals for the next 2 weeks?
Nope, no blockers, and my goals would be just those that I laid out.
Yeah, sorry, I just asked, but you clearly already gone over them in your update. Okay, thank you, Jason. Ryan?
Oh, I am unmuted. Okay, good. Yeah, so mostly now I'm working on outreach to get more people applying for the grants program. So just designing a grants outreach committee, and as you know, Jay, and so I'm working on that, and then we'll have that up for review. Going to have more people involved in that because we want to have more community engagement in the grants program, as well as getting like the word out more just to new people, because I know there's a lot of the, as I'm sure everybody else here knows, it's often the same folks working on stuff, and so I want to get some more people involved in that sort of way. So I'm going to be like outreaching one-to-one people. So that's pretty much ongoing for the rest of the quarter and beyond, I'm sure. But yeah, so that's basically what's going on here. We're doing the approvals on grants, as Jude was saying, but that's basically the focus of everything. Looking forward to seeing the governance committee grant come through when the time is right for that.
Great. Any blockers, anything that you specifically would like to get done over the next few weeks?
It's the only blocker's time. It's the same thing, right? So this is Jude's, because there's a lot of people to contact and stuff. So, yeah, if there's like, I know Jay asked you about already, but Jason, if you know any folks who you think I should reach out to, please let me know. Jude, same thing. Be happy to connect people one-on-one and help people where they can. If any questions or they have feedback on the grants program that I can take to our grants committee and help move things forward to make it the awesomest grants program that ever was. Ooh. That was my grants dance, I guess.
Cool. Thank you for that, Ryan. That's really exciting about the grants committee and just all of the efforts on the grants program getting off the ground. It was super exciting to have the first round of grant recipients on the town hall, by the way. I think that was super exciting for the community to see and for the PBC team to see, just because it's something we've talked about for so long. And now people are actually seeing that this is a legitimate process that you should go through, and it is a legitimate way to fund your ideas, and that you need to come prepared with good ideas, which a lot of our community members have. So I think it was just very encouraging for the ecosystem overall. Yeah, okay, so I will go. Ryan, you mentioned this, but the grant proposal for our group is there hasn't been that much movement on it. Actually, the one thing that I wanted to talk about with this group was perhaps replacing one part of the proposal, and that is the Gaia Hub inboxes aspect of the proposal. So I think with the voting that you mentioned earlier, Jude, and with the Camp Evil Code of Conduct, those things are pretty straightforward, and I think that I personally think that they're things that we can get started on this quarter. I've mentioned it to Diwakar, and we'll have a call with him to explain a little more about like the scope of the project, but it just seems like with all the work that needs to be done with Stacks 2, this is less of a priority, but could easily, because we have like this skeleton and ideas for how we could do this, we could easily pursue this next quarter. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't supposed to get started on the discussion now, but that is where my head is at with that grant application. And mostly I'm just eager to get it out the door and get it through the process for review, because it's actually really valuable to get comments and feedback from the grant committee, because at this stage we don't really know what else we need to add. So that's where I'm at with that. There are a bunch of other sort of community initiatives in flight that I think are of interest to this group. So I had a great call with Alex Grabe, who's a developer experience lead at Blockstack PBC last night. And we've been talking about hack sessions for the community for a while now. So as we all know, we have a really committed and talented developer community, like working on Blockstack all the time. And we basically just want to mobilize this community of developers along with our engineering team to just hack on relevant issues more often. And right now we've been inspired by Hacktoberfest. We just want to encourage more open source contributions across the board. But Depending on how successful something like a hack week would be, this is something that we could do monthly, and that sort of led to some thinking about grants for community leads. So there are obviously folks like you, Jason, who have taken on huge pieces of community work, so much so that, you know, it's clearly a full-time job. And I think the ownership and leadership that you take on for these projects is really key to consistency and sustainability for these community initiatives that everybody seems to be interested in, but like, you know, we don't really know how to get to the next level with. So I kind of wanted to float the idea of putting writing up a grant application for some of these community lead roles. So having someone who does actually take the lead on hack sessions, right, or hack weeks, and having that be their sole focus. And I know, Jason, you have brought up the issue of bounties for some of these more discrete tasks with standard operating procedures for this group, for example, but also acknowledging that by having someone take care of those discrete tasks, they would, you know, then become an expert in how this group runs and could eventually become like the recognized lead by community members. So yeah, we've kind of had overlap with these ideas, and I wanted to throw that out there and get the group's help on refining it, because I think that there is something to that idea. Alex and I were really excited about it when we talked about it last night. So that is where I am. Blockers, I don't know. It's probably time, and it's probably like just finding the time to sit down and come up with a cohesive strategy. It's really easy to have good ideas. It's like much harder to turn those ideas into actionable strategies. So yeah, that's why I'm talking about them here. And over the next 2 weeks, I really hope that we can just submit this grant application and perhaps make some movement on just getting the gang back together, the usual governance group gang.
I think that's a really good idea. I think the grant committee would be interested in trying that out, setting up grants for running community events like hack sessions, or getting people together to work on a particular problem that could be hammered out in like a weekend or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Because the point of the grant committee is, and this is actually kind of something I'm personally trying to adjust to, is more than just soliciting technical solutions for technical problems. It's also about growing the community itself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'll give a little context. I realize that there is a way to go through this agenda, so I'll give a little context and then we can move forward or back. Or thanks, Jason, for your reassurance. Yeah. Okay. So the context is that Alex was able to put in the time to go through a bunch of Blockstack repos and pull issues that are that would be really great to work on with community, right? So these are critical issues that are important to the tools and applications that community members are working on, but maybe aren't necessarily prioritized because of the very focused work on Stacks 2 stuff. So these specific issues have been pulled and labeled as like, you know, good Hacktoberfest issues or just good community issues to work on. So we have a list of those already. That was like the first step in making this happen. And I know that the engineering team internally is looking forward to having a dedicated docs day, or like a day or two next month, where they just have dedicated time to work on getting high quality documentation out there for Stacks 2, which is super important. And we've seen really good examples from other organizations, right? Like Docker did a hackathon completely focused on, they're a much larger organization, but they did a hackathon completely focused on documentation, got a ton of help from community, and it was really fun, obviously, because documentation enables everyone. So when you can like mobilize your global community to do that, and you just you make it fun and you reward these tasks with points, everybody wins. So that's sort of what we want to work toward. And I think that like we have some things in place, but need help from community to push it forward, of course. My fear is that like this becomes another Blockstack PBC self-centered event where we're like, hey, these are some issues that we have, like who wants to help us work on them? Like we're willing to put some rewards toward that. And that's very different from you know, building camaraderie between all Stacks community members, and fostering a sense of like, we want to work on these together at the same time every month, because, you know, once we get this stuff done, we can start tackling like these other projects that we've been wanting to work on. And especially now that we're all remote, it's like a great way to just socialize as well. I used to like, in my old company, we had internal hack weeks for our team where we worked on problems that were often left behind. It was so fun because you just generally don't have that kind of time to focus like that any other time of the year. So this is an opportunity for community and other entities to do that. So now I'm rambling at this stage, but that's the context. And if anyone has ideas, especially on like the grants front, like how we could structure that grant, what would make that grant successful, I'm all ears.
I know something that might be, because there's a wish list, and like Friedger put one on there. So you could add that or one of the specific issues that Alex has brought up as like the first one, and then it could be added on there. I mean, that's just one place, or like it just like, gets it more visible for our community members to bring it forward.
Well, and I'll second that. I like the wish list idea because that helps people who may be a little intimidated by writing a grant proposal anyway. It's like, hey, here's a basic outline of what we're looking for, what we're thinking. You could turn this into something bigger, but it gives you a nice starting point to start thinking like, hey, that's something I would do a grant for.
Yeah, it's almost like a call for grants kind of thing. Could be rephrased.
Yeah, like a community call in
Yeah.
a way.
So it would be like putting the idea out there and putting sort of like a skeleton of what it would look like out there and hoping that someone else picks it up and like writes it in full.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I can like share it with the community. Like once it's up there, I can say, hey, there's a interest in this on our wish list, and who wants to work on it? You know, there's money in it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
or potential.
Yeah, I guess what I couldn't, what I was unable to figure out independently is that, you know, I could easily write up this application, but I just don't think it would be right coming from me. It should be something that another community member wants to sort of take on, and even if the community member who writes the application doesn't actually need to be the person that ends up taking the role. It could just be that they write it and they have other people in mind. So it'd be like if Jason were really passionate about this and was like, I recommend like Pascal and Juliet and Charlita. I think that they would be great to lead this stream and this stream and this stream. And like, you know, a call for anyone else who might be interested. So I don't know. I also don't know if you should specifically call people out. that's what I was thinking in my head. So there would be specific roles laid out. We need someone to lead this, we need someone to lead this, and we need someone to lead this.
Maybe before putting it on the wish list, you could go into Discord chat and just so it's less formalized with the conversation. Then you can tag people, and it doesn't feel like you're tagging them in the grant.
Mm-hmm.
We had at the last grant committee meeting had separately talked about the idea of trying to like maybe not privately, but like directly reach out to individuals to try to, at least in the SIP process, to get people to form advisory committees, like even if they're just one person committees for now, just so we can start getting that ball rolling. So it's not without precedent. So I'm trying to say, like reaching out to specific community members who we think would do a good job at getting a particular type of grant off the ground or getting a particular community effort off the ground.
That's something that I could do, Jenny.
Anything like it should be structured and seen as like an honor or like a commendation.
Cool.
Like, I think you'll be good at this.
Great. Yeah, I had the sense that would be okay. I didn't want it to be like, I guess what I wanted to avoid was, hey, I want to contract this work out to someone. I really wanted to avoid it seeming like that. I think my sense is that there are a lot of folks who could take the lead on certain projects and would be happy to, but because these projects end up taking so much time, it actually is kind of unethical to expect people to step up without there being some sort of compensation or like some sort of structure in place. That's where my thinking is. I just didn't want it to come off as like, hey, this is the job, you know, and I said this to Jason as well, like bounties are always a great idea, but I wondered whether they kind of undermine the goal of fostering a long-term dynamic of people wanting to take projects to the next level. But Jason, you brought up a good point in that, like, you know, in completing a bunch of discrete tasks, you can become an expert on something and eventually want to step up. So there are like a few ways to go about it, but as long as it's clear that this is not like a contract for work and I need someone to do this kind of thing. It's an opportunity to sort of take ownership of a project, then I think it totally works.
Yeah, totally. Like, I see what you mean, wanting to avoid trying to turn this into some sort of transactional relationship. Like, this really should be an exercise in camaraderie.
Yeah.
We're not soliciting people. We're saying like, hey, we're doing a little get together here to make a particular set of documentation for this particular process, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We know that you spent a lot of time working on it in the past. We're wondering if you'd be interested. We'll make it worth your while, but we really would love for you and the following people like CC'd on this, because we know you guys have worked hard on this in the past. Like something like that.
Maybe even if there's a particular one, like a particular issue that you have in mind, like Alex could share it since he was the one organizing it, and then it doesn't have so much of a. Because I know as working in the community side of things, it's harder to post that stuff would not be seen as pushing a certain thing. You know what I mean?
Are you talking about specific GitHub issues, Ryan?
Yeah, like if there's a specific GitHub issue that he's found, then he could say, "Hey, this one's come up." Like it could, and then that way, if it's Alex doing it, it might come across less as community. I don't know.
Just clarifying that there is a list of issues that folks could work on. That it's basically a list of issues that are up for grabs. Some of them are actually quite simple and straightforward, so most of them aren't worth building an entire grant application around. The idea is that list exists as like a continuously updated directory, and during these hack weeks, these hack weeks they could be themed, right? So like this month our theme is Hacktoberfest, so just like, you know, any and all PRs go, because we want to encourage open source contribution. But next month it would be like doc specific issues, and then the month after that it would be Clarity specific issues. So they would be themed, and the goal is just to make a huge dent in this list. And then we build our open source muscle of like operating like a whole community that comes together and like tries to get through these critical issues collaboratively, rather than like asking, oh, who's taking care of this, and you know, where is this, why did like progress on this disappear, so that there's visibility. So yeah, just a little more context on that. And I can share that directory with you all after this, pending like Alex is okay with it, but I'm sure he will be. Yeah, okay, well, it sounds like the reception to this idea is positive. I'm aware of the time. So actually, Jason, I'm going to defer to you. We've had some discussion on a few things. How would you recommend we move forward? There's a section for foundation updates, action items, discussion items, miscellaneous items.
Sure. So I think the quickest thing we could go through the foundation updates, if you go ahead and click on that label in particular, there were just a few little things that were standing out and that we've kind of talked about from meeting to meeting. So, you know, we've had this idea of a community board seat, for example, and, you know, a few people have voiced that they like the idea, but we haven't really had a way to turn that into action yet. So that was a big one that I would like. These are things we definitely want to keep on the list and keep in the discussion. But if we don't have any updates, I think it's good just to give these a high level overview on each call, and then same with the action items and discussion items as we can. But also, you know, keeping in mind everyone's time and the fact we have a smaller group today, I don't know how many decisions or things we can actually make. But with that in mind, so the community board seat is one that I imagine would stay open. The call for board nominations, that's actually stayed open because that's an ongoing process. So there might be something we can list there, but it's a nice thing to kind of talk about in each meeting. And then the bylaws, those are out already. So I think we can actually close that issue and call that good to go. And that's more the goal of why we would kind of review each of these categories. So does anybody at least here see any issue with closing the bylaw issue? We've got bylaws in place. Any blockers to that? All right, so that's one thing I can definitely take care of. Or if you want to just go in and close it out, I think we're good. And then from there, we can do the same with the action items and discussion items real quick. I think the other goal of it would be, you know, for the people we have on the call and as we start to get more of our regulars back in, is to find those action items and discussion items that really matter to people, to have their chance to still bring them up or to update any progress or anything else. And of course, anybody's welcome to make comments on these issues, especially anybody watching this recording later or anything else. This is our running list of items that we have for every meeting. So I think that's more of an important point to make at this phase. And then hopefully what becomes more of a focus as we have people joining the working group or, being more present on these calls. And even if you can't make these calls, make comments on the issues or create new issues, or let's keep things moving in a sense that we can still have these conversations, whether they're async or part of the calls themselves.
Got it. Thank you, Jason.
That's my spiel.
Okay. That's actually a great point. I think that we've appreciated moving to a bi-weekly or semi-monthly schedule just because weekly was getting a bit difficult for all of us to keep on top of, but we lost some consistency in doing that. So there are suggestions for how we can keep up consistency without having to go back to that weekly meeting schedule. That would be great. I know in the past we've done things like asynchronous updates in the channel, and we've talked about that here too. So that's potentially a solution for the consistency issue. So we can move on.
Yeah, and kind of on that same topic, when we were talking about these standard operating procedures that we have, what I would like to do and what I'm working to update them for is to help people feel more comfortable taking part in any of this. So earlier, we were talking about, while it's great to have a community lead, it's really great to build things in a way that anybody can replace you or anybody can do the tasks you're doing, so that you might be the person doing it now, but there could be someone doing it later. And I consider the same when we talk about the small, like discrete tasks that we would do bounties for. That way it's really easy for someone to do the notes after a meeting or something like that. So that's where a lot of these procedures are headed. And once those are updated, I think it would be a lot easier for people to jump in and say, oh, I want to do this little portion or that little portion or something to that effect.
Got it. Okay. Should we move on to the action items? And see if we can.
I think it's a pretty long list, but looking at that first one, that one can go out because we've got the grants working through GitHub for now. And I know grant.io is coming down the board now. Jude or Ryan, do we have any updates on the grant.io integration? Or are we just sticking with GitHub for now?
It's so we're still going through testing of it and stuff like that. They're thinking, like, for tracking milestones and things, I haven't seen on grant.io how that all works yet. But yeah, because there's going to be different things. I think GitHub may end up still being used in some ways. But yeah, grant.io is getting closer. We just got to get it all like on the website and everything connected and all that stuff that I don't know how to do. But that's ongoing. So yeah, it's coming.
Okay, awesome. Well, in that sense, I'll close out the grants application draft after this, because we've definitely gotten to a stage where we have a grant application because we've got them processed and they're going through. And some of these other issues that we have on the list here, there was actually the second one that I created here. We're using GitHub Pages for both the resources and project management repository right now. And there was some consideration of putting them onto an actual subdomain of stacks.org versus using the standard stacksgov.github.io domain that comes with it. So that's the second one on the list there. Do we know, at the last time I brought this up, we didn't have control over the DNS from the foundation side of things. Has that changed at all? I think, Jude, would you know?
I don't think it's changed. Again, it's a matter of bandwidth on our end.
I totally understand that. It's a chicken and egg thing, because with Stacks 2.0 and everything that's being built right now, that's definitely the top priority. So I know these are smaller items, but that's why they continue to stay on the list. So we'll just keep that one open.
Yep.
Okay. Did you want to, should we go through all of these, Jason? Or just find out?
Yeah, it just to be considerate of everyone's time, let me kind of remember what we're going through here. So the general Stacks Foundation information structure, I don't recall what that one, can you pull that one up, number 77? Okay, so this was where we started reorganizing things, and I remember that. So we have actually made some really good progress towards a lot of that. And what I would like to do, so my task over the next 2 weeks is I'd like to go through some of these existing issues and see what's done. So we can go back to the main list, and some of these are definitely going to get closed out, because I'm looking at like the landing page one, number 45, that's definitely done at this stage, even if we want to change what the domain is later. And I'll do some cleanup before we have to go through each of these individually. I think the bigger point that I wanted people to see was that these labels correlate to each section, and that if we want to add new things, or if we want to make comments, or if we want to do anything related to them, this is the place to do it. So as long as we're getting that message out there, I think that's good for this meeting. Otherwise, I will definitely focus on that cleanup so we can get a better list to work with in these meetings, because I'd like to focus our time on the things that matter versus just going through each one individually.
Got it. Thanks, Jason.
Mhm.
Okay. Discussion items. I think we went into some discussion. Okay, so there's nothing here yet.
I think that might actually be a broken link on my side. I think it's supposed to be MTG-discuss instead of discussion. So if you go ahead and click on it and just make it the word discuss, that should work. I caught this in another one that I was working on. Yeah. And this one's a longer list, but we've had a few of these open more just to make sure that they get addressed at some point. And it was, we had some difficulty in figuring out if we're ready to close them out or not, but I can review this list as well and kind of tag some of the people involved. So I'd say let's plan on our next meeting in 2 weeks, really digging into these two lists as they're updated and just seeing if there are other discussion points. And we can also invite some of the people, like for example, number 54 was the Two-Row Wampum and Fab Academy stuff that Harold was working on. And I haven't actually seen an update on that in a little while. So I'd like to touch base with him and invite him to the next call and say, hey, you know, are we ready to close this out? That kind of thing. But this also definitely comes back to the, you know, having a lead or somebody to help review and look through these issues and make sure they're updated instead of getting stale or anything else. But yeah, I don't think there's anything. Let me just take a look. There's nothing that I would see as super critical jumping out at me right now. I think it's easier to just let today's meeting be what it is, and we'll start pushing some of these issues. I'm also considering for the standard operating procedures, since we're moving to this 2-week cadence, it might be nice at the 1-week halfway point just to send out a general reminder in the governance channel of like, hey, this is where you can look. These are the action items. These are discussion items. Remember to add your comments. So I'm going to add something to the standard operating procedures for that as well. And the only other big thing that I have from this list is I'm going to start with the process of creating the agenda right after the meeting. So we'll create our new agenda after this meeting closes. We can share that with the group right away. We can share it at the 1-week point in the middle, and then 24 hours before the call, just to hopefully get a little more presence for what we're doing and when things are happening.
Cool. Got it. Yeah, it seems like with a lot of these previous just action items and discussion topics, it feels like it's a matter of chasing some folks down and seeing whether these projects are still projects that need the support of the governance working group, or whether it's something that we want to continue to focus on. So this does give us a reason to sort of personally invite folks back to just give an update on the work and their progress.
Well, there's also some really good ideas. Like looking at that one, we had the town hall meeting for the governance group, or just for governance in general, which I thought was a great idea to have a regular meeting on a set cadence, be it quarterly or just, you know, less often, but similar kind of town hall structure to what PBC does now, just from the foundation side. And the other one I saw on there too was the fireside chats, you know, like inviting some people from other communities and other areas and other experts. So that's where our discussion items really landed, were things that we didn't want to forget. And I think those still have some relevance as well, but definitely things we can kind of skip over for today.
Okay, great. All right, so for the last thing, I did add this grant proposal, and you know, my preference is to make a decision. I think that I think it's straightforward. I think it can just be sort of a yes/no situation, because it's not completely eliminating the Gaia Hub inboxes proposal from this application. It's simply postponing it to next quarter. So that's something that I can share in the Discord channel as well, and something that I can get your guys' feedback on. For me, that is actually the blocker, right? Like figuring out the work for that is what's keeping us from submitting this first draft of the application. And my sense from the team is that it's a pretty big project to take on. It's not impossible to take on this quarter, but because of all the work happening with Stacks 2.0, it's likely that it could get pushed, or just like the quality could be compromised because we don't have enough dedicated time for it. So any immediate thoughts? Jude, I know that you and I talked about this for quite some time, so maybe you have a strong opinion about this.
You know, I'll jump in real quick. I know one thing that I asked when we were initially looking over this, and I was kind of in and out of the process, was about splitting up the grant proposal into individual grants anyway. And I saw that come up in Discord at one point from somebody else, and I'm not remembering who at the moment. But I do think that it makes sense, right? Like if that's our main blocker with the Gaia Hub inboxes portion, then that could be broken out into a separate grant. It could be, or a separate topic item. And we should move forward with the two that we're ready to move on. So I'm in favor of that. I'll vote yes.
Yeah, go ahead and split them. Don't worry about the Gaia Hub inboxes. That can be pushed until somebody needs it so badly they can just do it themselves.
Got it, yeah. And we actually have a lot laid out for it, so that if someone, it could actually be a wish list grant. Like I could just put it out there and encourage someone to pick it up, and also encourage the structure that you and I discussed, Jude, with having a mentor from the team, because I think that that is important. So
Yeah.
Great, okay. Just as a reminder, the other two parts of this proposal were the Camp Evil Code of Conduct, which is honestly the perfect, it's like the perfect candidate of a project to hand off to a potential lead. So someone who enjoys writing, someone who is well-versed in governance and feels really strongly about the Stacks ecosystem ethos. It's the perfect project for someone like that to take on. So I feel strongly about that, moving on with this proposal. And the voting mechanism, for sure. This is something that once we sort of get established, will just be used forever by the entire ecosystem. And I presume that there are a lot of interesting folks who could take the lead on that in our group and outside of our group as well.
I agree.
I'm sorry
Cool.
for not being able to make progress on the Stacks voting mechanisms. I have just only so many hours in the day.
No, don't worry about it, Jude. I think a lot is laid out for it, actually. So there's enough there that it can at least enter the application process. The next step is approaching community members. So like we've talked about earlier, it's good practice to approach potential grant recipients to take the lead on some of these projects. Yeah, I don't have anyone specific in mind just yet, but we've got a community of very talented people. So that was it on my end for this. I can socialize all this information and this update in Discord, and hopefully get approval to just submit this soon.
Cool. Look forward to reviewing it.
Thank you.
In the grant committee, that is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think progress is a good thing. Let's go for it.
Nice. Oh, and then, I will keep us all updated on this other grant for leads for things like hack weeks. That time is also a blocker. I need to sit down and put together a cohesive strategy, but that does it on my end. Are there any final comments, questions, concerns?
Nope, I'm good on my end. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to go look up prickly pears.
Okay. See you all later. Thanks for a productive meeting.
Catch you later. Bye.
All right, take care everybody.